So take a seat.
Yep.
Got you some water here. Ooh, thank you, mic guy.
Mics are on.
Mics are on, so don't say any of that mean stuff you were saying before about me.
Yeah.
All right. I know you don't like Canadians that much, but this is the best you can get.
Yeah, and Canadians are like okay. I mean, like in ice hockey and stuff, but we have some good Finnish players there, so that helps.
We should leave right now and go play some one-on-one. No problem.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Cozy crowd, awesome. Anybody who's here or up there, I can't see you so well, but if you'd like to come fill in the front seats and get extra cozy and yell out questions and yell at me and yell at him and talk about how great Canada is at hockey, that's cool. My name's Avery Schrader. I host a show called LIFTOFF, which is this crazy collaboration between my company Modash, LIFT99, there's some lovely people here from LIFT, and Verif, who really helps make it possible and helps us kind of, LIFT99 helps us with the network and the space and that sort of thing. And Verif has made it possible to do stuff like Robotex and hopefully bigger conferences and travel and do the show in Kiev and stuff. We've interviewed some really interesting people, Karl Kotkes, Martin Willig, Yevgeny Kabanov, Alariaho, and soon some even more international guests. And today I'm super excited to chat with you, Peter. Mr. Vesterbacka.
Yeah, but just Peter is fine. So
just Peter's okay?
Yeah.
All right, that's good. This show is a little shorter this time, so I'm going to jump right into questions. I'm going to try to leave a little bit of time for Q&A, but the best Q&A is when you just have a question and yell it out. This isn't like typical Estonian behavior, but I'm thinking this is international audience a little bit. So show off your outgoingness. Peter, like a lot of people know a lot about you. Lightneer, there's Rovio, there's the Finesse project, but I wanted to first start with, for you, who is Peter Vesterbacka, or what is your bio as you see it?
So how much time do we have? I don't know. I mean, I don't like really think about that kind of like too much, but yeah, good question. So tend to get involved in like wide variety of like different projects, and I mean I've always been doing that, and I mean if you don't go back like way back, but like reasonably far. I mean I started my career working for kind of like the original startup, if you will, so the one that Bill and Dave started in their garage in Palo Alto in 1939. And then typically when I talk to younger people, I have to say that, 1939, before my time. So I wasn't there, but Bill and Dave started their company, so Hewlett-Packard, in 1939. And it's actually, it's always good to kind of like bring this up because that was kind of like the birth of Silicon Valley. And that was like the original garage story. And after that, we've had to suffer of all of these like companies that got started by some guys in a garage in Silicon Valley. But yeah, so that was like the original one that started it all, and it was a long time ago. So it's also kind of like good to keep that in mind, that Silicon Valley wasn't kind of like started by Google or Apple or Facebook or Twitter or one of these like newcomers. It was like a long time ago, and it's been a long time in the making. And I think that for many success stories, it's not like, you wake up one day and then next day you have it like done. It takes a while.
So you didn't get started yesterday then?
I didn't get started yesterday or the day before. It was actually like when I started HP, it was like actually first stint at HP, I was actually doing internship a summer like early 90s, and then I ended up working at HP in Finland, and then Finland, Europe, world kind of like thing, and
but that internship was in the valley, so you were
in the valley.
You were in the valley before the valley was the valley.
No, the valley has been the valley for like a long time, and I think that's kind of like it was already the valley like in the early 90s and before. But of course it's been evolving and like new kind of like focus areas. I mean like the whole thing with like Silicon Valley, that it was like about chips and like silicon and stuff. But then of course nowadays it's about getting a car or food delivered to your house, so it's like a different lifestyle kind of thing, so maybe not solving the world's biggest problems or anything, which is kind of like an opportunity for the rest of us. but yeah, so Silicon Valley is one place where I don't need like a navigator to like find my way around. So I've been there like a lot. And but yeah, so I started there, and then while I was doing my kind of like HP stint, I also run a thing called the HP Bazaar.
Okay.
And that was actually something that we created in 1999, and that was like in the era of like the .com like boom and then bust.
The bubble,
But it's actually, yeah, I think what's interesting, so HP, you know, kind of like the original like Silicon Valley company and all of that, right there in the middle of the action, but they still managed to miss this little thing called the internet and the web. And I think that's what happens many times for successful companies, that you're so successful doing, like in the HP case, they were like selling client-server systems, like by the truckload. And then in the same neighborhood, you had a company called Sun Microsystems, and then they started making these like servers for, you know, like the internet and the web and everything. And then they had a very successful campaign, and might be before many of your time, but they were saying that they were the dot in .com, and then, you know, people who were starting their like, you know, web businesses at the time, then, you know, who do you call? Oh, I'll call these Sun guys and get this, you know, server from them, because apparently they are some kind of like dot in .com and, you know, has something to do with it. So then at HP we had to do something, so we started this, yeah, and that actually was kind of like a coincidence. I was doing business development for Europe. My boss at the time was on his like summer vacation. He said that, oh, there's this planning session coming up in Palo Alto, why don't you go there? And then I went there, and it was all about like, okay, what do we do? And then we're like, oh, now it's like about the internet, the web, you know, .com, yada yada, that actually the next step will be about services. So then we launched this e-services like program and strategy, and saying that everything become a service. And of course, I mean, now it's like obvious with all the cloud computing and all of that, but this was like 1999, so we were, I don't know, 7 years too early, which, you know, is this classic like Silicon Valley and, you know, global rule of like golden rule of venture capital. Too early, too late. So timing is like super difficult. But anyway, so in 1999, we wanted to do something about this, and then I was in Palo Alto doing this strategy session, and then I told the guys there that, hey guys, yeah, it's all going to be a service, but it's also going to be a mobile service. And you have to remember that this was 1999, way before iPhone, Android, and at the time I was told that, yeah, Peter, we don't really need any mobile phones here in the US because we have so many pay phones that, you know, why would anybody want to carry a phone around? and I was like, yeah, good question. But anyway, we all know that history then, you know, showed that actually people want to carry around a phone and or like a device. And but anyway, so then to kickstart this, we created something called the HP Mobile Bazaar. We started it in Helsinki, and the idea was to kind of like kickstart this mobile services ecosystem. And again, HP was providing this boring, you know, like boring infrastructure, servers, and all of this stuff that you don't really see. And then we wanted to attract the people creating all these like cool new services, so the startups. And we then started working with, I think, I mean, we started in Helsinki, and we created like a physical site, so it was like what you would call a co-working space nowadays, I guess. But we started that at the HP office, and then we started doing what you would now call hackathons. We call them bazaar camps, 60 hours, you know, 3 days, 2 nights, non-stop coding, food, drinks, sleeping bags, laptops, all the tools done. And we did this in Helsinki, we did it on the beach in Cannes, we did that on rooftops of you know, big buildings in Singapore, we did kind of like one of these, like not a forced labor camp, but like a bazaar camp in Beijing on tennis courts of the Shangri-La Hotel. So we basically like kickstarted this mobile like services ecosystem, worked with 600-700 startups. And then in 2003, I organized a game-making competition, and the idea was to make the best possible mobile multiplayer game. And then Niklas, Kim, and Jarno, 3 young guys from Aalto University, which was actually called University of Technology or something like that back then, but now it's Aalto. But anyway, so they took part in this competition, and they created a game called King of the Cabbage World, and then they, surprise, surprise, won the competition, came to me, what do we do now? that we won the competition. We're students here at Aalto, and you don't really know. And then I said, okay, that same advice, and I keep doing the same advice actually nowadays because it's the only thing that makes sense, that you guys love making games, so why don't you, do what you love? Start a company to make games. And then they started Rovio in 2003, and then over the next 6 years made 51 games. 52nd game that came out actually 11th of December 2009 was called Angry Birds. And yeah, then that became like pretty successful. So 4 billion downloads. We made a movie in 2016, became #1 in 52 countries, and yeah, did the IPO. And then after we got the movie out, then I told the team at Rovio that, so I used to be the Mighty Eagle at Rovio. That was my title there. Now that we got the movie out, it's like a good time for me to do bigger things. And then of course I was asked, like, okay, what could be bigger than Angry Birds? And I said, okay, education. Been working on actually education for like many years, but now like maybe more seriously. Mm-hmm. So then I said that actually over the next 10 years, the plan is to transform education globally. And then people of course already start, okay, tell me more. So then, the education business is 6.3 trillion globally, so it's like pretty big. So trillion, not billion, and it's super inefficient. And of course, if you look at how we do education here in like Finland and Estonia, unlike our Asian friends, we have very short school days, not a lot of homework, fantastic results. And Asia, long school days, crazy amount of homework, not so fantastic results, I would argue, if you look at like innovation and all of that. So the goal over the next 10 years is that we're going to reduce the size of the global education market from 6.3 to 3 trillion. And then because we're like modest Finnish people, we are okay if we capture only like 10%, like every year. And if you do the math, it's like still 300 billion. So it's like, okay. So that's like the plan. And I was actually asked, we did this slush event in Shanghai in September this year, again. Was the 4th slush in China. And then I was asked that, but hey, like 300 billion, that's like a lot. So wouldn't you be happy if you only do like 1 billion? And then I said that actually I would be like totally not happy, because that would mean that we've failed totally in like transforming the educational system. So it's not about the money, it's about like the change. And what I mean by that, I mean, if any of you been to, like places like Singapore or China or Korea or India, take Singapore. School day starts at like 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning, and then you basically get home maybe 10 if you're lucky, because you have school and all this extra tuition because it's like crazy competitive, and then you have hours of homework on top of that. And in fact, there's so much homework that the kids can't cope with it themselves. So it's very common that parents do the homework on behalf of the kids. And then I'm like, so what's the point? And then it's like, oh, Peter, you have to understand, they have to get to the next level, meaning to the best university and all of that. And then it gets even crazier. Some of the parents go to school in the weekend so that they will know how to do the homework on behalf of their kids during the week. And then I'm like, guys, have you thought about like having a life? But then it's like, oh, you have to understand it's super competitive. Actually, it's so competitive in places like Singapore that kids hide the school books from the other kids before important tests. They buy console games for their friends the day before an important test so that their friends will play the game and not study. And then I'm like, what kind of sick society are you guys creating? I mean, this is like super bad. But then the worst part is that if you look at Singapore last year, the number of suicides in 12 to 17-year-olds doubled. Korea, 25% of the high school kids consider suicide because of academic pressure. I was in India in April, and I was told that India by April had 8,000 teenage suicides because of academic pressure. So, fail a test, kill yourself. Not good. So if we only end up making 1 billion, we've failed. So why we're really doing this is that we need to fix this, because it's like super bad. And then, like coming from Finland, we have the best educational system, and according to the UN, we're also the happiest nation on the planet. So I think that there is like a correlation between this education and happiness. So yeah, that's what I'm up to like right now. Okay. But yeah, long kind of like intro, but yeah,
no, yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
that's totally okay. I'm glad to like really open it up. I want to like address one thing and then come back to the education thing. You mentioned twice. Once was you said the words "the rest of us," that it leaves room for the rest of us, and you also said that HP had missed the internet kind of coming.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, what do you think it is? Was it those experiences, or was it something else that gave you the kind of desire to do that 1 billion's not enough because it doesn't allow us to achieve the mission that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, and first of all, I don't think like kind of like the financial side of the money. That's like
I know it's just the correlation between the mission.
Yeah, but what is important there that's that it's one way of measuring it. I think that is very important. I mean, again, if you look at like some of the things that I've been involved with, Angry Birds. So I mean, everybody told me that, Peter, you're crazy when I said that we're going to have 100 million downloads of Angry Birds. We had maybe 1 million or 2 at the time, and then nobody had done that. But it's 100 million downloads, super easy to understand metric. Like that's where we're going. And okay, maybe we're not going like, we have to navigate and we have to find a way. But you have to have these kind of things. And the same thing with the education, that you have to have some kind of metric to be able to then kind of like track the progress that, okay, now we're making 1 billion, 10, 100, whatever, then we're like making good progress. And there's some other metrics that you need for that as well. But then I think that also it's always about, of course, I mean, it's like vision thing and like whatever, but it's about like ambition and then also attitude. And you could also under this attitude, like the courage and, like not being afraid of like doing stuff. And I think that was one thing at Rovio, why we made Angry Birds like pretty big, was that we were not afraid of doing totally unexpected things and things that we're not supposed to do. I mean, we're told that, oh, guys, you are like a games company. You don't know anything about toys. Why are you like doing toys? And then, yes, we didn't know anything about making toys, but we partner with people who do that. And nowadays, I mean, I'm also like building this tunnel thing. And then, you wouldn't believe how many times I'm told that, Peter, don't you understand that like making a tunnel is different from making games? And then no, you're telling me that it's different. Actually, it's not different. So it's a little bit like.
What gives you that attitude is what I'm trying to figure out, because I think it ties into your desire to inspire.
I think that I always had that like attitude problem. It's also like I think that I like to question things. So I really hate like these kind of like standard business practice, or like being told that that we have always done things like this. I mean, when I started working this tunnel project, I was told that, Peter, you have to understand it takes 10 years to do the planning.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what? I mean, it can't take 10 years to plan anything. I mean, we're not like planning to go to Mars or the moon or whatever. So it's like a tunnel. How can it take 10 years? And then actually it turns out it takes half a year. It's not like difficult. But of course, if you basically your way of doing things is like, let's have lots of meetings and drink lots of coffee and nothing happens. Of course, it takes 10 years. So I think that it's very important that you are very ambitious, you are very aggressive in like setting the goals that actually, like with the tunnel, I mean, we're going to build it, 15 billion, first trains running 24th of December 24, done. It's not like, how difficult can it be? And actually turns out that it's not like that difficult. And that's what I mean, that it's, when people tell me that, oh, don't I understand that, this is not like making a game, that it's somehow more difficult. Actually, yes, of course, it's different, but the attitude and like the attitude of like getting stuff done is totally the same, no matter if you're making a game, building a tunnel, going to the moon, whatever. I mean, that's kind of like my thing has always been that when somebody tells me that something is impossible, then I will, like make sure that I'll prove that it's not. And also all of these kind of, standard like business practice, and we've always done it this way, you always have to question that. I mean, sometimes, of course, it makes sense, but many times people just get caught up with this kind of like tradition and all of that, and I think it's important to question. So That's kind of like where I'm coming from. And it's a little bit like with the tunnel as well, that, I was here actually in this building, and then we had a dinner like at Latitude 2016, and then just talked about the tunnel, and then said, okay, yeah, why don't we like just make it happen? And then started doing it. So, yeah, now here.
And then I guess this maybe ties in a little bit to your desire to disrupt the education system in the sense that maybe that's kind of something you want to inject that attitude into that world, or?
Totally, yeah, and also actually I think that it's not only like it's of course a big opportunity, but I think it's also even a bit of our I would say that it's our responsibility to kind of like share what we have learned and how we're doing education with the rest of the world. Yeah. I think that there is a lot, and then I mean we have a lot to share, we have a lot to learn, and I think that it's super important to make that happen. And I think government should do a lot more what we do in business like all the time, which is like learning from others, benchmarking you can call it, or whatever you like. But I think you can learn a lot by like doing stuff together. I think that's something that is super important, no matter if you're making like a game or a tunnel or I don't know, whatever.
I want to give you a chance, because we don't have a ton of time, I want to give you a chance to like go a little deeper in at least one topic. I wish we could speak for maybe another 40 minutes or something, but with Lightneer and with what you're doing, can you talk a little bit about how are you going to do that crazy thing?
Yeah, so I mean, like, Lightneer, one of the companies, but actually right now involved with like 6 different game studios, and many of them actually are making fun learning games. And as kind of like a theme there, what we want to do is we want to take some of the best like game designers and have them work with the best pedagogues, best scientists, and we actually want to make games that are fantastic games, but then as a little side effect that you also learn. Actually, always from all games you learn something, but also then like why couldn't you learn particle physics or quantum physics for like 3-year-olds or you name it. And I think that if you look at the games market, what is very important there is that there are 700 games hitting the app stores like every day, which means that it's like a bit competitive. And if you are in that business, you have to figure out, I mean, if you want to be successful, that why would I download your game over one of the like other 700 new games hitting every day? Or let's also keep in mind that there are hundreds of thousands of like games out there already, so it's not like 700 is like the competition, it's like hundreds of thousands. Yeah. And so you basically, if you are in that business, you have to figure out how to stand out. How will people like pick your game over all the others? So that's super competitive. And also another thing is that the dominant design, I mean, if you look at business model and all of that, it's free to play. It's a freemium model, which means that, okay, it's free to kind of like download all of these games. And then if you don't like the game after like, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, gone, because there was like no cost. Okay, the cost of the time of downloading the game, but that's like no big deal. So again, and even that is going away with some projects that people are working on. But anyway, so I think that that is a very important skill. Because we're all competing for people's time, attention, time. I mean, do I want to play a game? I like watch something on Netflix. It's all like on my device. So with education and with everything, we have to kind of like understand that we're competing for the attention. We're competing for the time. And when I was kind of doing Angry Birds, was actually asked about the competition. And this was, my standard answer was always that actually our competition, it's, Disney, and I use that, to position that just like Disney, active in all areas of entertainment, and of course, always, it's very good to pick like on a big guy. So if you're like a small startup, you're not competing with our startups, but you're competing with like Google or, like Facebook or Disney in our case. And then people are like, who do you think you are? I mean, Disney is like pretty massive, but you know, that's fine. And then I said that it's Disney and it's television, all of television. And I was super happy. I think this was maybe 2011, 12, something like that. Forbes did a big article on Angry Birds, and they picked on this like, okay, Disney and television, and the whole attitude was like, who do these guys think they are? And then they did this that, Disney invests as much into their like theme park that they were building at the time, outside of Shanghai. I guess it was like they invest as much in a day as Rovio makes in a year, or some like crazy thing like that, because that was like 5 billion investment, that Disney was making, and then they had done the stats of television versus Angry Birds, and television, I don't remember the exact number. I think that it was like 80 hours a month that people spent on watching TV. It must be actually more, but like some crazy number. And then only 4 hours on Angry Birds. And then I was super happy when they did that, because then they pitched or like set up this that, okay, Angry Birds against all of television, which means that but at that time we were bigger than any individual TV program like anywhere, which is pretty good indication of like the success. Of course, you can always spin this that it's super unsuccessful because hey, look at how much bigger TV is than this one game. But I was pretty happy when they picked on that yes, Disney and yes, TV. But so the point there is that you're always competing for how people will use their time, and I think that this is something that we need to keep in mind, like on the educational side, that our kids, and anybody studying anything, there are so many distractions, so many other things that you can do, and you can't, just like say that, yeah, of course, but it is what it is. You have to step up your game, and you have to make the educational experiences much, much better. And I think that this is what we're trying to do. It's not just with the games, but with education in general, that it has to be much more engaging.
Yeah. I want to ask one final question because we're running over time. But so with the games then, and it kind of ties into what you just said, do you have plans to kind of integrate this into your grand scheme of actually pushing this into the system of education somehow?
Totally, yeah. And we are doing like, that's exactly what we're doing. We're changing the system. And they always love when I say that in China, so yeah. But anyway, I think that you have to do systemic change when it comes to like education. It's not good enough that, we're now working on a big project in Andhra Pradesh in India, 50 million people, 50,000 schools. And even if you would build like, let's say 100 new schools, if you have 50,000 schools, 100 schools, yes, it's kind of like a blip. It doesn't really like impact. So you have to change all 50,000 schools. You have to do systemic change, and that's exactly what we're doing. So it's not one thing; it's many things, and taking kind of like more of a more like holistic view, and been very happy. We started this project now with Slovakia, like country size of Finland. They also play ice hockey, so great. And the World Championships are actually in Slovakia next year. So and Finland is playing the same group, I think, as Canada.
Okay, we'll see.
So we'll see. We'll probably like beat you guys, but anyway, most likely. But because we have good history in Bratislava, we won the World Championship last time there. But anyway, yeah. So there we are actually now working together with the government, and Martina Lubkoja, who is like the education minister, she went on national TV in Slovakia and said that, okay, Slovakia will now change the whole educational system and use the Finnish model as the basis.
Okay.
And that's kind of like, and we now have 10, 15 people from Finland, like on this advisory board, looking at like what needs to be done. And then of course it will take 10 years or more, but that's at least there is again like ambition and like direction. So that's kind of like what we're doing there. And same thing in Andhra Pradesh, all 50,000 schools, next 10 years, same level as Finland. And then we know we're actually not just like talking about it, we're also like doing it. Yeah, totally about systemic change. So we have to change the system. That's what it's all about. And You have to do top down, you have to do grassroots. It's not like one thing, but many things that you have to get right.
Well, I'm going to choke to death on stage.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
So before that happens,
yeah.
I want to say thank you so much.
Hey, thank you
to the audience.
Oh yeah, and hey, can we take some questions from the audience?
No one's yelling at me yet, so can we take questions from the audience until someone yells at me? Does anybody have a question? For Peter, for me? Yeah, we got one right here.
My name is, sorry, here I go again. My name is Arthur Dollar from the Netherlands, and I'm curious, how are you planning to expand this system influencing across Europe? Because we have the same problem in Holland. We have a lot of money, we have a lot of universities and high schools, but the quality of education is going down, so I'm really interested in your story. So how will you expand what you're doing at the moment?
So right now it's I would say that it's bit random and actually very opportunistic in a way that we go where we're kind of like asked to go. So Slovakia kind of like happened a bit randomly, but then we started that in February last year, and now like making it happen. Andhra Pradesh, that I mentioned, same thing, that ended up there February this year. Met with the Chief Minister Naidu there. We immediately like shared like the same like vision and like what needs to be done. So then let's get it done. And then now have similar discussion in Argentina, Colombia. I was in Paris actually first time in many years, and then I realized that actually, there's a lot to do in France. So and now they have pretty good leadership, I think, or let's say that at least the vision is no longer that everybody will live on a farm, you know. So that helps. We'll see if we can fix that. So yeah, the answer is that. That we can do anything, obviously, but we can't do everything. So again, can't do everything at the same time, and I think that it's a little bit like with if you want to eat an elephant, it makes sense to kind of like eat it in small pieces, and same thing with like boiling the ocean. That let's not boil the whole ocean immediately, and we need to do it in small portions. So so I mean like. As far as the Netherlands is concerned, we'll just like get on a plane and next day we'll be in Amsterdam. So, or like same day, obviously. So, that's how it works.
Okay. Is there one more question? Because I'll just keep going until somebody tells me to stop. No? All right. Yeah, one here. Awesome. Last one.
Hello, my name is Thomas Turk. I represent the city of Tallinn.
Hi,
and you mentioned about the competition that we are facing all the time. So talking about Helsinki and Tallinn together, to whom we are competing in your mind?
We're competing with the rest of the world. Huh. And actually, I think that this is something that we also need to kind of like wake up to, that I mean Helsinki and Tallinn together is much more interesting than Helsinki and Tallinn separately. So it's super important. I mean, together we're like 2 million, we're bigger than Stockholm, bigger than Amsterdam, and we're actually going to be the fastest growing metropolitan area in all of Europe. So that's something that we need to prepare to. I'm actually now next going to go to talk to the tunnel group at the parliament here, but we've done the same, like in Finland, we briefed our like finance ministry and like all of this, and it's actually very interesting. We did a road show now for the tunnel project in September, part of October. So we went to Shanghai, Beijing, Singapore, London, Paris, bunch of like other cities, also Amsterdam, Stockholm, and just like talking about the project, the funding. On Monday we'll actually share some like good news on that side, and was very interesting. For example, in Shanghai, we had a meeting with one of the local investors. We spent 2 hours talking about actually what we talked about here: education, happiness, the values. And then we spent like 50 minutes. Oh yeah, the tunnel. Yes, sure, we would love to invest. And always when we pitch the tunnel project, we are actually pitching Helsinki, Tallinn as the best location for your business, your family. Why? Because we have the best education. We are the happiest nation on the planet, stuff like that. And the first question always after the presentation is that when can we buy apartments? When can we move? And this is, doesn't matter if we're in London or in Shanghai or Beijing, especially like in Asia, always the first question. So I think that we have a very good story, but very few people are sharing it, properly, if you ask me. So we're always come to Helsinki and then, come to Tallinn, but it's doing it separately. And then once we start doing that, I don't think that we are that different. But when we talk about like this Helsinki-Tallinn metropolitan area, have you heard about this tunnel project? 15 billion by 24, it's going to be done. Super interesting. All the cool startups. Estonia, 1.3 million people, 4 unicorns. How amazing is that? Done okay on the Finnish side as well. So, like there must be something in the water or in the air or something. So I think that, I think with Helsinki and Tallinn, we're like super competitive. But the problem is, Finnish people, Estonian people, we are not always very good at understanding how good we are. And we are like super bad at communicating it. It's a little bit, if I look at like my, friends in Finland, that is, why would anybody come here? I mean, the weather sucks. I mean, like go outside and it's like, hey, really? And, like, I don't really believe in this happiest nation on the planet that, like who made that up? And I think that it's, then when you go outside, then you start to realize that actually, maybe it's not too bad. So I always encourage, and I hope that many more young people in Finland, Estonia would actually like leave, go study somewhere else. And of course, then you end up coming back, or not all, but many. And I think that that's something that we need to have, that kind of like global experience, and it's super important. We're like tiny little nations, both of us. But we have like something pretty amazing to offer here in this part of the world, and we just need to share it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter.
And that's why you're here as well, right?
That's why I'm here.
Exactly. Cool. Yeah. Thanks,
guys.